You've been told the Revolutionary War was just redcoats versus rebels. But that's only half the story. Britain had a secret weapon, one history barely mentions. Most people think Native Americans fought back simply to protect their land. But the truth was far more calculated. Britain funded them, armed them, even rewarded their resistance. Hidden alliances, shadow battles, promises erased from every record. How did Britain turn Native Americans into a weapon against America? And why did history bury it? Step into the shadows, where the real war never ended. British Hidden Wars. The American Revolution was over, or so the world believed. On paper, the colonies had won, the British Army had retreated, and independence was declared. But across forests, valleys, and hidden trails, the war quietly raged on. Britain refused to surrender. The fight had moved into the shadows. Britain's influence over native nations wasn't accidental. Decades of land disputes, broken agreements, and westward expansion had left many tribes wary or openly hostile toward the new American states. The British had long-standing alliances with Native American nations like the Mohawks and Senecas. When the Revolution ended, these alliances became a secret weapon. Weapons, ammunition, and intelligence flowed to native warriors, turning them into instruments of a covert war. Under this cover, frontier settlements were struck with deadly precision. Militias trained for conventional battles were ambushed at every turn. Farms went up in flames. Supply lines vanished overnight, slipping through the colony's grasp like smoke. Panic spread faster than any redcoat could march. The Mohawk Valley became the epicenter of fear. Native warriors, guided by British officers and armed with muskets, moved like shadows through the forests, striking with knowledge of the land no soldier could match. Each raid, each strike, had a singular purpose: to destabilize a young nation and stretch its defenses to breaking point. Britain's quiet hand moved unseen, turning the wilderness into a theater of controlled chaos. The true scale of this hidden campaign would remain a secret for generations. But the truth behind every ambush, every raid, every whisper of fear wasn't just in the wilderness. It was in the agreements made in shadow. Britain didn't just rely on native skill. It wove a web of secret alliances and promises that shaped the frontier war. These alliances were more than strategic. They were carefully crafted networks, binding tribes and empire together in a war few realized was still being fought. And now, from these hidden agreements, the shadows come alive. The raids, the ambushes, the terror, they are the true story of the frontier war. This is where shadow battles begin. July 1778, Wyoming Valley, Pennsylvania. British allied Iroquois warriors and Loyalists struck the valley. Nearly 300 American settlers were killed. Homes razed, fields burned, survivors fleeing into the forests, fear trailing them like a shadow. By October, the raids moved north into upstate New York. Onondaga and Onondaga were destroyed. Supplies vanished, buildings leveled. For American settlers, the attacks were sudden, relentless, impossible to predict. Each strike a reminder that the war had not ended. November 1778, Cherry Valley, New York. 30 settlers killed, dozens taken captive. Families who thought themselves safe found themselves at the mercy of warriors guided by British strategy. Panic spread. Communities realized their defenses were fragile against this invisible war. German Flats, New York, followed. Joseph Brant led Iroquois and Loyalist forces with precise knowledge of the terrain. Homes and supplies disappeared overnight, leaving settlers struggling to survive, never knowing who would strike next or where. In 1779, the Continental Army launched the Sullivan expedition into Iroquois territory. 40 villages destroyed, food stores burned. The campaign aimed to break the power of British allied native forces. Yet the fear, the loss of neighbors, homes, livelihoods could not be erased. Every raid, every ambush, every burned settlement was part of a calculated campaign to destabilize the Americans. Independence had been won on paper, but the people still faced war in the shadows, where terror traveled faster than any soldier could march. Recognizing its impact, Britain escalated support, arming, funding, and guiding native allies with greater intensity, keeping the frontier a battlefield of fear. This deliberate strategy set the stage for the next phase of the conflict. Funded and armed native allies. By late 1778, British support for native allies had intensified. Weapons, gunpowder, and provisions flowed more deliberately than ever, equipping native warriors to strike with precision. Officers provided guidance and intelligence to coordinate raids against frontier settlements, ensuring maximum disruption without engaging British troops directly. American settlers and colonial leaders quickly recognized the pattern. In letters, petitions, and official reports, they described these raids as acts of terror, noting the systematic targeting of civilians, homes, and supply lines. Many accused Britain of orchestrating a proxy war designed to destabilize the young nation. Across the Atlantic, British officials denied direct involvement in the attacks, maintaining that native raids were independent actions. Yet the flow of arms, resources, and intelligence continued, fueling a campaign that unsettled the frontier and intensified fear among settlers. The escalation was deliberate. Native allies were better supplied, better informed, and more coordinated than ever before. The frontier had become a testing ground for a form of war that relied as much on strategy and intimidation as on conventional combat. As the conflict deepened, loyalties began to shift. Allies and enemies, friends and rivals, everyone had to navigate a web of changing commitments. And it is here that our story turns to double allegiances and betrayals. Where trust was fragile, letters were secret, and every choice could tip the balance of war. Double allegiances and betrayals. As the war dragged on, alliances once thought unshakable began to fracture. Many Iroquois nations, including the Mohawks and Senecas, had thrown their lot in with Britain, promised protection, land, and support. But as British power waned and supplies dwindled, ammunition, food, and reinforcements became scarce. Promises went unfulfilled. Some tribes realized Britain could no longer defend them. Under pressure from American militias seizing territory across New York, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, native leaders faced impossible choices. Negotiate with the Americans, cling to their British allies, or try to remain neutral. Every option carried risks. Every decision carried the weight of life, land, and legacy. Loyalties split. Some tribes stayed with Britain, following Joseph Brant into contested lands. Others reached out to American authorities, seeking safety and recognition. Even within a single nation, allegiances diverged, turning friends into foes and allies into strangers. Some families, fearing retribution or displacement, fled north to Canada, abandoning ancestral lands to survive. Others remained, clinging to their villages, hoping to endure amidst chaos. The betrayal cut deep. Tribes that had served as Britain's hidden weapon, guiding raids, striking settlements, defending key outposts, saw their sacrifices ignored. Land promised by Britain never materialized. Communities faced displacement, scarcity, and the looming threat of American expansion. Every village felt the tension of survival, every decision shaping the fate of generations yet to come. When the war ended, the fragile bonds that had once held tribes together were gone. Communities were scattered, lands abandoned. Survival became the only measure of success. Generations inherited the scars of broken promises, fractured loyalties, and a war fought in the shadows. A war largely erased from history's memory. Erased promises and broken treaties. As the smoke of war cleared, native nations realized they were alone. Britain, their supposed ally, had retreated. Promises of protection, promises of recognition, all gone. Thousands of Native Americans had been drawn into the conflict because Britain guaranteed it would stand with them to the very end. Mohawks, Senecas, and allied tribes fought, risking their lives, their villages, their futures. They were pushed into a war they never sought, used as weapons in Britain's personal vendetta against America. During the war, Britain offered arms, supplies, and formal assurances of ongoing protection. They promised security, sovereignty, and a future safeguarded. Yet when the fighting ended, those promises vanished. The Americans arrived with their own treaties, like the Treaty of Fort Stanwix, 1784, meant to protect native lands. In practice, settlers ignored them. Authorities failed to enforce them. Communities were devastated, resources destroyed, tribes left exposed to a new nation's ambitions. The cost was immense. Thousands of Native Americans died, many in battles orchestrated under Britain's guarantees. Their sacrifice, their suffering, their blood, all abandoned once the war concluded. The betrayal ran deeper than broken treaties. Entire nations were left vulnerable, ancestral homes lost, traditions uprooted. Villages that had survived generations were now shadows of themselves. Generations would inherit not just grief, but the heavy weight of promises broken and lives manipulated. The scale of loss and deceit left scars that generations would carry. A grim reminder. In the shadows of history, the war's most hidden victims were left to pay its heaviest price. From shadow battles to broken promises, history has hidden the full story of those who shaped the fight for America. Alliances forged in fire, lives risked, and loyalties tested. Native nations fought, strategized, and sacrificed, only to face abandonment and betrayal. Across every chapter, one truth emerges: wars are never as simple as the stories we're told. For more untold truths and hidden histories, hit the subscribe button. History was wild, we've got the receipt, people. Oh yeah, the past must have been crazy.